It has been exactly 1 year since I started my first job as a UX designer, and I don't think I knew exactly what I was getting into. I mean, I definitely had an idea of what it would be like to work in product design, but it's just one of those things that you can't really prepare yourself for until you're actually in that situation. There's been a ton of challenges. There's been so many situations where I've been doubting myself, where I didn't really know what to do, where I felt really stupid. And I think that's just part of starting something new. You have to learn as you go. But since it's been 1 year now, I wanted to take some time and just share some of the things that have been especially challenging for me and that I've learned from the most, so that hopefully you can also learn if you are just starting out in the field of UX design. So one of the things that I felt especially frustrated over in the beginning had to do with design process. Now, when I was first getting into UX design and reading a lot of books and articles, one of the things that was especially important to me was to understand the process that you go through when you're designing products. And so here, one of the things that you hear about often is you go through these phases that typically consists of identifying your problem phase, you've got your ideation phase, you've got your testing phase, and then you've got an implementation phase. And then you kind of go around as you iterate through the different phases. And so when I first started, I think I had expected that as you go through designing your new features or improvements to the product, you really just follow each step of the process. Like you would go from one step, like you kind of figure out what the problem is, then you move on to the next one until you reach the end. But in real life, of course, that's not really how it works. You kind of very often bounce back and forth between each step in the process. You just kind of have to figure things out as you go. And so for me, that was kind of a surprise, and it was very chaotic for me in the beginning. I kind of lost sense of where we were, what we were doing, and why. And it really just took me a while to embrace the fact that things do get a bit messy. And you just need to be ready to accept, sometimes you have to go take a step back. Maybe you've defined the problem and you've come up with a first solution, and then you realize actually you're not solving the right problem. So you need to backtrack a bit and move back in the process and start over kind of. And that's all part of the whole process. That's how it works. You can't always move through it perfectly, one step at a time. It's always going to be a bit messy. The second thing that was a big eye-opener for me was that just because you're a UX designer doesn't mean that you're the one who has to come up with all the solutions. You don't need to take ownership of that. It's great if you do, of course, but very often the ideas can come from, anyone else in the team, or from a user, or from somewhere else. When I was first starting out, I thought that it was completely my responsibility to bring in the good ideas. I thought that everyone expected me to be the one to, be super creative and solve everything with my great solutions. When really that's not the case. Very often the idea is going to come from someone else, and you as a team have to figure out together which one is the best one, and which one is the one that most people want to pursue. Of course, it's good to bring in some ideas. As a designer, I think you kind of have to, but you also have to accept that it might come from somewhere else. And so you really just gotta create some kind of space where everyone can contribute and everyone feels like it's safe to, come up with a bunch of different ideas. And then as a team, collectively look at all the ideas and together decide which one everyone thinks is the best one to move forward with. Another thing that I've learned over the past 12 months is that you need to spend more time understanding the problem than you think. I think it's one of those things that you hear and you read in so many books, and it's just very hard to pull off. I think we as designers just have some innate way of going into a problem-solving mode very quickly. I do, at least. And so when I'm faced with some kind of a challenge or a problem we need to solve, it's very easy for me to start coming up with solutions right away. It's very tempting to do that, and it feels really good because you feel like you're moving forward in the process. But very often you just kind of need to pause for a minute and really, dig into the problem. Really ask a lot of questions about, who's having the problem, why is it a problem in the first place, how many people are having the problem. So really just try to dig into the problem a little bit more, because very often you'll find that what looks like a problem is really just a symptom of something else. It's really just something that seems like a problem, but really there's a bigger problem behind that. And you'll only get to that if you ask enough questions. If you immediately come up with a solution, then you'll only solve, that symptom, and the original problem behind that is still going to persist. So yeah, that's something I still struggle with today. I really have to remind myself every once in a while to think and, just to stop and start asking more questions before going into, problem solving mode. And finally, I've realized that you need to start sharing your work earlier than you think. So basically, I have a tendency to want to perfect what I'm working on, or at least I have this idea that I don't want to share anything until it looks done or it looks finished to some degree. And that is quite dangerous, because it means you'll often end up spending a lot of hours on something that might not be the right solution. So if you're too focused on making everything look done and pretty and pixel perfect too early on in the process, then yeah, obviously you'll spend a lot of time on it, and maybe you will be working in a direction that's not necessarily the right one. Maybe you're not solving the right problem. Maybe you haven't considered, I don't know, some kind of technical limitation. Maybe there are just other things that you haven't considered because you can't think of everything at once. And so it's very important to share the stuff you're working on with the people around you, with the people that can bring in different perspectives and help you see why maybe you need to change some things. And so again, this is something that can be a challenge for me. I do love to just focus on what I'm working on, really just spend time making it look and feel great. And so I really have to force myself to take a step back, sit down with my team and share with them what I'm working on and get some feedback so that I know that I'm moving in the right direction and that I've considered everything. So those were my learnings so far. It's been a great 12 months as a UX designer. It's been super fun, and I'm so happy to go to work every day, I have to say. And at the same time, I still struggle with a lot of things, even some of the things that I talked about in this video, they're still a challenge to me. And so you've got to be ready to keep learning and, listen to the feedback you get, ask for criticism so that you can keep learning and keep getting better. All right, so that was a little bit about some of the things that I've learned in my first year as a designer. If you want to share some of your learnings when you were first starting out in design, leave a comment underneath this video. And of course, if you like this video, feel free to subscribe. Oh, and if you're not doing it already, I would highly recommend that you follow me on Instagram as well. I try to give an inside look into the everyday life of a UX designer on there, as well as some general tips and learnings for me and book recommendations. And with that, I think we're done with this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.